Hello, welcome to another episode of Low Carb in the Leaves. I'm Dr. Mary Barson from Real Life Medicine. Yesterday, I talked about Viktor Frankl and this extraordinary revelation that I had when reading his book many years ago about how we all have the power to choose our response. For any given stimulus, there is this gap, and in this gap we can choose how we respond. And I found this incredibly profound at the time, and have since, as have many people around the world. And finding that gap between stimulus and response, between something stressing you out and grabbing the Mars bar, between someone cutting you off on the road and you honking your horn incredibly loudly, between that being reactive, a stimulus and your reaction. And so often we have these ingrained patterns that don't serve us well, and but with practice and conscious effort, we can change the way we respond to our stimulus. We have the ability to choose our response, that response ability. But finding that gap takes a bit of time. And for me, it's an ongoing journey in life. I have by no means got this perfect. I definitely don't. What helps us find that gap, that space where we can be less reactive and have time to choose our response? So the stressful event doesn't automatically equal a Mars bar. Perhaps the stressful event could equal stepping outside and taking 4 slow, deep breaths, or something more constructive. Well, for me, being able to find that gap and to utilize that space involves self-care. So if I am stressed and burnt out and overrun and overwhelmed, I'm more likely to be reactive and to react to the ups and downs of lives in ways that are less constructive and not necessarily in line with my health goals. So, what is self-care that allows me to find that gap? It takes on various forms, but it certainly involves eating good food and taking time for myself to renew. And meditation and mindfulness are a good way to do that. Time with friends is extremely important. For me, movement. I'm not a super buff gym junkie, but I do enjoy moving. And the relevant thing here is that all of those things, every single one of them, of my favourite self-care tools, perhaps apart from the food, but all the others have become a lot harder. I'm in Victoria. I'm in stage 3 lockdown, not stage 4 like my friends, family, and colleagues in Melbourne. But without my regular yoga classes and meditation classes and meeting my friends at the pool for a swim, without being able to go out, walk to a cafe, without being able to send my child to school and having to somehow negotiate my full-time work, my partner's full-time work, and her full-time study, all of these things mean that self-care has become a lot harder. And truthfully, I have really dropped off. I've dropped off on lots of things. Time to myself in particular, when, without that school time, there really isn't much time to myself. without the gym, my exercise regime has really reduced. It hasn't reduced to nothing. I still walk each day and I do a good 5 or 10 minutes of dancing in the living room with my daughter, bad dancing, every evening. But it has really reduced, and I have noticed it in myself that I have become more reactive. I have found that gap more difficult to find. And I had last week off, recuperating from a very small little operation, and I was contemplating in that week off, and I have renewed my dedication to self-care so that I can find the gap. I am going to do it better, and I'm going to really utilise that time in the car as I drive to work. That is my alone time. I'm even going to maybe just use that time to meditate. Not while I'm driving, I promise, not while I'm driving, but just before I go into work, use that time. I'm going to go for walks. I'm going to make sure I get some alone time, even though it's really hard. And it feels selfish. It feels selfish to prioritise my alone time with a walk on my own. It feels selfish to leave a little bit earlier for work so that I can have some meditation time in the car park at work. But it's not. It feels selfish, but it isn't. Because if I spend some time on this self-renewal, on this self-care, then I'm less reactive and I'm a better version of myself. I'm just going to show up to my role as a mother, show up to my role as a doctor, show up to my role as a partner, as a daughter, as a sister, as a friend, as a family member, with more energy, more empathy, more compassion, and I'm going to do a better job if I spend some time on myself. So self-care is not selfish. It is the exact opposite of that. It reminds me of this proverb, sharpening the saw. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. It goes like this. Imagine that you're walking through the woods and you come across, let's say, a woman, and she is madly sawing away at a tree. She's just going at it really, really hard. The tree doesn't seem to be moving at all. The saw's not going anywhere, but she's frantically sawing away. And you ask her, sorry, hi, what are you doing? She goes, I'm really busy. I've got to get this tree cut. I'm sawing down this tree. You take a step back and look at the situation and think, that saw looks quite blunt. Perhaps you should take a break for a few moments and sharpen the saw. And she says, I haven't got time to stop and sharpen my saw. I'm too busy sawing. And on she goes with that blunt saw. So if you take some time each day to sharpen your saw, then you will be a much more effective human being. As Dr. Lucy a few weeks ago said, we are the golden goose. We are the golden goose, and we need to care for ourselves. So that's me. I have a renewed commitment to taking time out for myself, to taking time out to exercise, to make sure that I meditate each day, just for a few moments. And my saw will get sharper, and I can show up as a more effective version of me, and I could live life more in line with my health and weight loss goals if I find that gap. Find the gap between stimulus and response. In that gap, you can choose your response. All right, wonderful humans. See you later. Have a fabulous Tuesday. I'll be back tomorrow. Bye now.